has already indicated to all of you how to get your coffee to market, a farmer's perspective of production and quality. And the session speaker, the first speaker is already ready, Dr. Manuel Diaz, the Mexican producer, Rural Development and Coffee Senior Consultant, O&A Consulting, Mexico, and he would speak on the topic exploring coffee origins and insiders' perspective of coffee production and agricultural practices. And I would request Dr. Manuel Diaz to kindly come over. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and let's welcome Dr. Manuel Diaz. He's based on multidisciplinary approaches, strategic planning, quality systems, and participatory methodologies, design, local development, and agribusiness cluster strategies in several products in Mexico. So the subtopic would consist of exploring coffee origins and insiders' perspective of coffee production and agricultural practices. So ladies and gentlemen, it's straight over to you, Dr. Diaz, to take us through this session.
Good morning, everybody. It's for me a great honor to address Indian farmers and researchers, colleagues. Thank you very much for the Coffee Board of India for inviting me over. So I would like to share with you some ideas that I've been collected as extension worker, civil servant, researcher, and private consultant that I've been playing these roles in the coffee industry for the past 30 years. So allow me to begin with an overall overview. I'm going to explain to you what is my view on the problems of farmers. So the main problem is that most of the farmers are very low productivity and cannot compete with the most efficient farmers, Brazilian and Vietnamese farmers. And these relate to many issues, but particularly different quality of coffee institutions. So farmers are enabled by the quality of organizations and policy making in every country. And in the past 30 years, we've been witnessing a breakdown on institutional capabilities. Only a few countries have managed to adapt to the new open markets conditions. Secondly, I would like to share some ideas of how to improve the position of small farmers, particularly towards this disadvantaged scenario. It has to do with two major things: how to produce efficiently high-quality coffee, and number two, how to build up a new set of coffee institutions. I call them the third generation of coffee institutions. The first generation was the colonial institutions that built up the coffee market basically in 18th and 19th century. And we still have them. Most of the standards, regulations, and trading institutions we have today come from late 19th century. The technologies that farmers use come from early 19th century. So we still live very much in the 19th century in many respects. So let me start it with the position of most farmers. In this graph, you will see the coffee land available or cultivated worldwide. You can see that Brazil has around 2 million hectares, sorry, and is around half of what it used to have. But it has managed to double productivity in the last 30 years compared to other countries. So only two countries have managed to increase productivity with less land, which is Brazil and Vietnam. Indonesia, for instance, has the second most abundant surface available, but with very little productivity. You can see in this graph how Brazil went down in terms of coffee cultivated area, but has increased its share of coffee production worldwide. Vietnam also has increased productivity in the same, almost the same land, and is cutting down a little bit on land used, no more than around 600,000 hectares. So the use of land is very uneven, very inefficient comparatively to these two most productive countries, which is Brazil and Vietnam. Brazil and Vietnam together, they can account for 60% of all the production in the world, and they can increase it if they want. If prices improve, the first to take advantage of any price improvement are going to be Brazil and Vietnam. Investments have been concentrated in the last 20 years in Brazil and Vietnam. Most of the coffee roasters, buyers, have been alienating supply chains in Brazil and Vietnam. So this is a big problem for the rest of the world. They have a great competitive advantage. So if we have a look at the history of coffee cropping, we can see that we've been following modernization pathways, increasing the number of trees per hectare and cutting down shade. This is the idea of modernization that we follow until late 20th century, until we reach 20,000 trees per hectare. But productivity is stagnant for most coffee producing countries since early 80s or early 90s. Even Colombia, which is one of the most successful countries, cannot be considered a highly productive country, is being unable to reach 1 ton of coffee beans per hectare, despite Colombia having one of the most advanced research systems and extension services. So only Brazil and Vietnam have passed the 2 tons per hectare barrier. Honduras recently has managed to produce a little bit more than 1 ton. Colombia near one ton. But most of the coffee producers in the world are stocked between 400 kilograms to 600 kilograms per hectare. So this has to do with the unsuccessful transitions from subsistence farming to commercial farming. That was the major paradigm in 20th century. So we tried to modernize coffee farmers, but in many countries was not achieved. In Colombia, which is one of the most successful countries, this transition was achieved only in around 60% of farmers. In other countries like Mexico, only 30% of the farmers were modernized in semi-shaded systems of production. So by losing the shade, we force farmers to become monocrop specialized farmers, dependent on availability of inputs, credit, and mechanization. But most of the countries fail to adapt to these high input, high mechanization systems. So we introduce more plants, but fail to introduce more mechanization and more technology. So we have depleted lands, acidified soils, and decreasing levels of productivity. So, for instance, in the case of Colombia, again, one of the most successful countries, we have an average density of 5,000 plants per hectare, but a production per plant of a little bit more than 1 kilogram of fresh cherry per tree. So increasing the amount of plants per hectare has led to a decreased productivity and density of the bean, which is something that I would like to explore further. So supply is concentrated in a few countries and in a few regions. Africa has not grown after the Second World War, when African countries became independent. They destroyed the colonial plantations and have not managed to recover. Only Uganda and Ethiopia recently have improved a little bit on production, but it's a region that is almost disappearing from the coffee market, despite Africa contributing with genetics and with one of the most high-quality coffees in the world. If we look at production, we can see that only Brazil and Vietnam have been consistent in increasing production. The rest of the countries in the world, they have very inconsistent levels, and in terms of productivity, as I mentioned, still less. So in Brazil and Vietnam concentrate between 50 to 60% of worldwide coffee. Indonesia and India, which are also important producers, they have increased consumption and decreased productivity. So if things go this way, we are going to have two options in the future: Vietnamese coffee and Brazilian coffee as main components of all coffee products. So as I mentioned, supply is being concentrated, but investment as well, development of technology. So the gap of productivity and technologies is increasing, particularly in respect to Brazil. So this is the graph for productivity. You can see in late 80s, Brazil was more or less in the same levels of productivity as most of the countries. It was in a very bad shape, but managed to recover through an institutional restructuring I'm going to talk about later on. Vietnam was aiming in a 5-year plan at producing 18 tons of coffee. It's now producing more than 30. They use the muscle of the state and even the army to fast transferring technology to very poor farmers and achieve a tremendous progress. So if we compare the levels of productivity, we can say that the benchmark to be profitable is around 1.5 tons of dry coffee beans per hectare. So very few countries achieve that. That means that despite all the technology and knowledge we have, we fail to transfer this knowledge to farmers and to have sustainable productivity levels. So most of coffee production is produced by the two countries that have managed to transfer technology, inputs, credit, and marketing solutions. So what's the source of quality and sustainability given this scenario? So it's been always 3 factors. The microclimate that express the ability of Arabica plants or Robusta plants to express its genetic architecture. Only a few climates have the temperatures, the soils, the natural conditions for the plants to show productivity and quality. The more the coffee regions resemble the origin of Arabica or the Robusta producing countries, the more this genetic architecture of the plants is going to show in productivity and quality. The second factor is genetics. The plant is a living thing. So if we adapt, if we have heterosis, genetic distancing, and allow the plant to evolve, then the plant is going to adapt and show high density in the bean. So we've been forcing coffee plants to live in conditions in which high productivity is not matched with high density in the bean. So this mismatch shows in an increased use of inputs and decreasing productivity. And the third factor is knowledge, the wisdom of the farmers, the systems of overcoming the constraints of climatic conditions. There are no perfect climates, not even now that we have a global warming. So we need very smart production systems. We need to change, we need to adapt, and we've failed to provide these solutions. So let me put this example. This is a graph showing 5 agroecological environments in Yemen. So Yemen is the only country that has managed to provide the solutions that we are suggesting here. So for every microclimate, there has to be a specific set of genetic materials well adapted to those climatic conditions, and one specific production system and processing system. So let me tell you, only Yemen has achieved that. So for every agroecological system, Yemen has a unique set of genetic materials and an adapted cropping system. If you go to Brazil, to Mexico, to Colombia, Peru, whatever country, you have the same cropping systems, almost the same, with a few adaptations and almost the same varieties. So let me show you. This is the highland slopes of Yemen. So here you will have three types of varietals. One tall variety, one mid-sized variety, and one short variety. The tallest variety provides shading. There is no water, you cannot have shading trees. So the tall variety provides shade cover and only have one harvest. The second mid-sized variety has more productivity and has up to 2 harvests. The smallest variety has up to 3 harvests when there is rain, good rain. And good rain in Yemen is 400 millimeters of water a year. This is an inundation system in Thais, in an upper, very dry plateau, highland, in which shading trees provide cover and deep rooting system. These shading trees have a reverse phenological cycle, means that when there is drought, they provide moisture. And this is an inundation system with different varieties. This is the wadi, the valleys, the most moisture rich and few land surface in Yemen. And here you have intercropping with food crops and commercial crops. Here you have again another set of varieties and another cropping system. So this is the solution for quality and sustainability. You must adapt genetic materials, and you have developed a smart cropping system adapted to your conditions. Let me show you now this graph, which is a scenario of lower density plants per hectare, in which an equilateral triangle is used instead of the isosceles triangle, which is the normal, or the square, the 19th century arrangement. So by using triangle, equilateral triangle, you accommodate around 50% more plants per hectare, but you provide more illumination, more aeration. You can accommodate less plants, but with higher productivity. So the key for quality is to have healthy plants that can produce healthy seeds of higher density with higher amount of soluble solids. So Hawaii, which is one of the industrialized coffee sectors in the world, they went back from 10,000 hectares per plant to 2,500 using a different arrangement, using a very heavy pruning schedule, a 3-year schedule, by which they can achieve 7 kilograms of fresh cherry per plant, which is more sustainable, more efficient, and more high quality bean than having 10,000 plants of hectare, producing each less than 1 kilogram per plant per hectare. So this is the key. We need to change our mindset and stop thinking about number of plants and start thinking about high density coffee beans of high quality. So the first solution I propose to small farmers to compete successfully against Brazil and Vietnam is focus on producing efficiently high quality coffee beans. So if we look at this table, the bottom table, this is a scenario of potential value. If you multiply density of bean, which is the 4th column, you will see that most of coffee being produced by Vietnam and Brazil is less than 650 grams per liter. Very low density. Fast grown, volume produced coffee leads to low density coffee, Arabica or Robusta. So this coffee is very cheap, but it provides little cups of coffee. So high quality beans subsidize low density beans in the blends. Farmers of high quality coffee, high density beans, shaded systems are subsidizing unshaded, cheap, volume-led coffee. So the most value that is produced in the world comes from well-adapted, fine Robustas or fine Arabica quality beans. The market is organized in 3 segments. The commodity segment, which accounts for 70%, provides liquidity and most of the billions cups of coffee every day. The second segment is the so-called sustainable market, which is around 20%, but only a fourth of this market is paid a premium. So 75% of certified coffees are not receiving any price premium. This segment has been a failure. Although it's the right way to address sustainability, it fails to deliver a premium price, significant premium price. The third segment is the specialty coffee market, which accounts for around 10% of overall coffee. And it's supposedly the solution to providing high incomes to farmers, but it's also failed. It also failed to deliver significant price premiums. The average premiums that specialty coffee is providing do not cover the increased cost of production of high quality coffee. So a high quality coffee with selective picking, perfect ripening point, long fermentation, slow drying, may cost up to 3 times the normal cost of production, which is around $1.40 in Latin America. So the specialty coffee pays around anything from $1 to $2 above for coffees between 85 points to 88 points, which is the most abundant part of the specialty coffee. So let me tell you, these premiums do not pay even the cost of production, but most farmers do not have an assessment of real cost of production. So the specialty coffee is also failing to create a long-term sustainable solution. So the sustainable segment is important. Coffee is one of the most certified food products, but as I said, only around 25% receive a premium price. So the market is being overwhelmed by premiumization, ways of adding value to coffees that are not high quality. So you can buy standard commodity coffee and make it into a ready-to-drink coffee and fetch a high price. You can buy a commodity Robusta and make it into a premium soluble coffee. So these are the main drivers of the coffee market that are receiving more interesting margins, but most of these margins go to the industry, to the consuming countries. Producing countries used to have access to around 20% of the overall value of coffee before the quota system collapsed. Nowadays, we don't share even 6% of the overall value. So many estimates about profitability has shown that most of farmers are not profitable, even if they receive good premiums for high quality coffees. One colleague, I think it was a Colombian colleague, mentioned that the real price in early 80s is around $2.80 now. So that's exactly what the specialty commodity coffee is paying on average to high quality coffees. So we now have the specialty coffee becoming the new commodity coffee. So for the most farmers, coffee do not represent a profitable operation. This graph, recently launched by the Coffee Barometer, the most recent one, shows that the living income is well above the average price of coffee that most farmers receive in the world. So most data is showing what farmers already knew. Coffee production is not profitable. So we need to redefine value and quality. Coffee is not only a beverage, but a food habit, a source of sensory pleasure, and one of the most certified food products. So we need to find different ways of adding value and differentiate our products. And the main way of differentiating our products is by creating flavor. That's the backbone of value in coffee. Somebody has to drink the coffee. So that's our main competitive advantage. We can process delicious coffees. We've been transforming processing in a radical way. We are living in a kind of a revolution of processing methods. We need to take full advantage of it. So coffee is winning competitions and achieving high prices are non-traditional wash. Exotic varietals and controlled fermentation processes. Coffee comes only from perfectly ripe fruit. We cannot change that. This is a major factor that we need to still pay attention to. We need to pay attention to all the accumulated science we have to manage processes. Processing is not about just removing the pulp. It's about using the metabolites that are produced in fermentation, using the energy of the seed trying to germinate, and to keeping the embryo alive. So these three processes have been proving to be very important to produce high quality coffees. And we have lots of scientific knowledge accumulated in the last 10 years. But scientists were telling us just 15 years ago that we only need to dry fast. So we need to change these perspectives and produce flavor. This is what is going to give us the competitive advantage for small farmers. Thank you very much.
Kindly come back, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manuel Diaz, for your presentation. I would request Dr. Sudha Yam, Divisional Head Pathology of CCRI, to kindly come and felicitate the speaker, Dr. Manuel Diaz. Exploring coffee origins and insider's perspective of coffee production. Let's give a huge round of applause for Dr. Manuel Diaz.